Hi, Ralph.
Hi, Jim. How are you doing today?
Okay, and how about you?
I'm doing well today.
Are
You
you
know,
are
I,
you optimistic today?
I'm feeling optimistic today. I am. And I've been thinking about the power that one person can have.
I've been thinking about that too. Ever since Amanda sent a journal article about Terry Fox. Do you
Yeah.
remember who he is?
Yes, Terry Fox was a young Canadian. Actually, he'd grown up a bit of an athlete. And at 22, he contracted bone cancer
No, actually, it was earlier than that. It was
earlier than that.
18, apparently, according to the article. By 22, well, he's on his way out.
Yeah, he has at this point one real leg and one artificial leg.
Yeah, he had one leg surgically removed. I remember that.
Now, one of the things that was kind of interesting, and it's not something I would have thought anybody would have ever done, is he decided with his one leg and his artificial, metal limb, he would run across Canada.
Yeah, I think his motivation was that he had seen other people with cancer and had seen the kind of treatment that was afforded. And so his run was not just hey, I can run across Canada, but he was actually trying to raise money, right?
He was raising money for cancer research and cancer treatment, and he succeeded in creating an organization that, as far as I know, still exists today. And people contribute money to it, and it goes into cancer research. Very little goes to administration.
Initially, apparently, he raised, get this, $850 million.
That's an amazing chunk of money, Jim,
Yeah,
really.
especially for an 18 or 19-year-old kid who had every right in the world just to sit in a corner and suck his thumb and feel badly about himself.
Yeah, why me? Why
Why me?
always me?
Yeah.
And the thing is that Jim and I are connected to Terry Fox's story because the city that we were born and raised in was one of the cities that he and his cross Canada journey ran through. And if you think of what he did, this is the equivalent of running a marathon every day.
For 145 days or something like that. Yep.
He got up in the morning knowing that he was going to try and run 25 miles that day.
Yep.
And
And the picture that is on the thing that Amanda sent is kind of interesting. There's a picture of him, and there's a police car behind, so I guess he had a police escort.
Escort, yeah.
And if you look in the background, you can see, well, there's a hill, and you can see a body of water, and that just happens to be where you and I grew up, Ralph. That's just north of the Sioux.
It is.
By Batchewana Bay.
Now, not to sound like we're tooting our own horns here, but in 1964,
I think. Oh, I remember that one well. Okay.
President Kennedy challenged everybody in the United States to attempt to walk 50 miles.
Yeah, I think, was it John F. or was it Robert Kennedy that really made that challenge?
I think it was John F.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
so we Canadians, not to be unchallenged,
not to be outdone by the folk in the U.S.,
decided to do a 50-mile hikes. And I remember that day, or 2 days actually, really well. My feet, my body, everything was so sore at the end of 50 miles. But by golly, I did it.
Yes, and we both did it, and I can tell you without feeling sorry for myself, not only did I hurt at the end of it, but going up that particular hill,
Ah, yes.
which is called locally called the Mile Hill because the steepest part of it is 1 mile. But the hill actually goes upward for over 5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And walking up that whether it was the shallower part or the steeper part, that was sheer agony because at that point we had already walked 30 miles and we were tired.
And just think, this Terry Fox was doing this at least 26 miles, every day.
Every day.
With the idea of raising money for cancer treatment and cancer research. So to me, Ralph, that really is the example of how much one person can actually do to make the world a better place. Now, the article goes on to talk about something that is more disturbing for you and I, and that is the concept of medical-assisted death, euthanasia. And you can read the entire article. You can read the uplifting part with Terry Fox, and then the more sobering part about euthanasia in Canada in the article as well. And at some point, we're going to get Amanda on here, and she's very articulate in terms of euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide, and she has some, I think, warnings for the rest of us here in the U.S. But things have really changed in Canada in terms of medically assisted death.
Yeah, now some of you may remember the doctor from Detroit.
Dr. Death. What was
Dr. Death.
Jack Kevorkian.
Kevorkian, yeah. And Kevorkian was a proponent of medically assisted suicide. And he did not make, from my perspective, fortunately, very much progress in selling that idea to the medical community in the U.S.
Yeah, but, that's an idea that seems to not go away. A couple of the western states are still kind of hotbeds of assisted suicide, are they not?
They are.
Yeah.
And, the interesting thing to me is Jim was telling me about having to have a horse and an alpaca and
a dog and a cat.
A dog and a cat put down at the end of their lives when their life became fairly unpleasant for them. And they both died painlessly and relatively instantly.
Yeah, as opposed to the last medical or injection execution in Alabama this week or last week, where apparently the individual took 2 or 3 minutes of writhing and extreme pain in order to die. The upshot here is that we should have veterinarians administer lethal doses, right? We won't go there.
We won't go there,
okay.
no.
Yeah.
And the veterinarians
won't go there either. No. Now, in the liner notes, under Learn More, we've got actually more things today than we usually do. We have the link to Amanda's journal article, and we also have a link to her Gmail account. So you can go on there, and there's a lot of stuff that she has done that's available, to anybody who wants to listen to it. I met her last summer at the Kirk Center, just outside of Mount Pleasant, and she was a Wilbur Fellow for a number of years, for a few years ago, there at the Kirk Center, and she's very articulate. Like I say, Ralph, we'll see if we can get her on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's in Ohio, in Steubenville at Franciscan University right now, or if she's back in Alberta. But she's someplace that we can get to, I think, via telephone. And there are a couple of things that are in the Learn More section that I want to kind of underline. The first one is a story that Sheila tells occasionally. It's not one of her big repertoire stories, but I really liked it. And the story is the man who grew trees, who planted trees and grew happiness. I think that's the.
Yeah.
And this is a story of I think a French individual who looked at the area around the north of France in the aftermath of a war, and saw the total devastation of the land, and so he began to plant trees. And over a 20 or 30 mile year, yes, 20 years, 20, 30 years. Come on, Jim. He had done a really good job of reforesting. Now, the article that I have there, I think, comes from Wikipedia, and you can take a look at it if you want. But the one underneath is even more interesting, I think, from a visual point of view. We've got two people from Brazil who were photographers, and they were going around the world doing their photographing thing. And they came back to where they grew up in Brazil and saw that it had been deforested. I mean, like cut right down.
Yeah, and in Brazil they do a lot of clear cutting, and then they put in a crop, and the soil is such that if you're lucky, you get 2, maybe 3 years of growing crops in this clear cut area, and then the soil is exhausted for crop growing, and so it remains what to most people look like devastated land that won't grow anything.
A barren place, yeah. So this man and his wife began to plant trees, and they planted, I think, over 2 million. At one point in the article, it says how many trees they planted. It was perhaps 4 million, and 2 million have survived. Anyhow, they've got some great pictures, before and after pictures. These people are photographers, after all. And the before pictures, look desolate, look like perhaps the landscape of the moon or Sudbury, Ontario. And by the time 20 years had gone past and they had been planting and replanting, it looked pretty good. And they've got some really good pictures of the before and after. But, so in one case, we've got one guy planting trees in...
The power of one.
Yeah, planting trees in France. We have a 18-year-old kid with cancer raising money for cancer research and cancer treatment. We have a couple of people in Brazil. We're not talking about huge government agencies here, Ralph.
No, if you think of it, this is basically one person or two people. Now, here in Mount Pleasant...
You have a story here about this, don't you? A similar one.
There's a place in Mount Pleasant that's now a public recreation park called Sylvan Solis. And the property was bought originally by two doctors, Dr. Shepardigian and
Dr. Nogler.
Dr. Nogler, and they bought it, and when they bought it...
It was in pretty bad shape, right?
The front part of the property had been clear-cut.
Okay.
And it was just basically barren ground.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to the Conservancy organization here in Mount Pleasant, which every spring sells trees.
Yeah.
And Dr. Nogler...
You can get like 25 little trees for $5.
Yeah. Dr. Nogler bought 2,000 trees.
Okay.
And he and his family and Shep's family planted those trees.
Okay.
So the area that was clear-cut was planted with 2,000 trees, of which probably 1,500 survived and flourished. And now it is well forested, and the trees have grown to the point where the lower branches don't sweep the ground. They're 2 or 3 feet up.
Uh-huh.
And so 10 years from now, it'll be a nice stand of pines.
Okay, so we don't have to go to France or to Brazil to make a difference, do we?
No, we don't.
You can
And
sort of look around where we are and ask the question, what kinds of things are needed here? Well, there's another story here in Mount Pleasant, Ralph, and that's the story of the soup kitchen. Do you remember that one?
I remember that one, yeah.
We have a place in town where people can drop in to be fed. They can drop in and be fed lunch. And here's a college student, I think, that originated it. And you can correct me if I'm incorrect here, Ralph, but a college student saw another college student eating a sandwich. And it was 2 pieces of bread and ketchup, I believe. And the first college student said, that's not right. We should be able to feed other college students, better than a ketchup sandwich.
Yeah.
And he decided, this second student decided that he would do something for the community, that he would start basically a food distribution program. And that's been going on now for 50 years, I think.
Yes, and now we have the soup kitchen where people who, well, let's not put too fine a point on it. People who are out of money, whether they're homed or homeless, they can go, no questions asked, come in, and whatever we have for lunch in the way of soup, sandwich, salad, you can eat. And for many people, that's their meal of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
again, with that power of one, right?
Right. Now, the other thing that this has expanded into is a place where once a month the Charitable Food Network makes available food if you are a person who is in an apartment or a house and you can cook, but you can't afford to buy food, which unfortunately is true for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and get the canned goods, the box goods, etc., that are available at this particular month, whatever it is, whatever has been donated, and basically you can eat. Now this is all a spin-off of that one individual who said, I want to start a soup kitchen.
Yeah. So there's one other thing under the Learn More that I thought was pretty interesting, Ralph. You and I have talked about long-term planning, and we've both sort of have shaken our heads about the short-sightedness of some of the plans that we see in government. And one of the jokes that you and I have is that the Chinese have a 500-year plan or a 1,000-year plan, and we don't even know what we're going to do for lunch. Don't. And so there was an organization called, the name escapes me right now. Do you remember it?
It's called the Long
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, they've got a 10,000-year plan, and so we just put it up there for you to take a look at. If you go into, I think it's projects, you can see the various projects that they have, including a 10,000-year manual for civilization.
And they put together and are putting in a mountain in the United States where it's protected, a mechanical clock that will be good for 10,000 years.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing that in 10,000 years, Ralph.
Right. My plan has always been to live forever, but...
And then there's one other thing that came up in a Facebook post that was sent to Sheila, and she sent it on to me, and I think it says something to the effect of words to live by. Anyhow, a 70-year-old who is looking forward to becoming 80 has been reflecting on his life and thinking about the things that he has learned over the years. Things like it's better to smile than to frown. It's better to be nice to people than be nasty. And he's got 14 or 15. And so I thought those would be good words to live by for 2024.
Yeah. And we would encourage you not to be too Pollyannish about it, but we would encourage our listeners to say, what can I do?
Yep.
Is there anything that the community that I live in is lacking, and how can I help?
On that happy note or optimistic note, I would say, this is Jim
And Ralph,
saying, keep your stick on the ice
because we're all in this
together.
together.